What's going on? What's going on? Let's get right into the card today. We got a game at 6 p.m., so just over 2 hours till it starts. It's a Battle of Rhode Island versus Brown and Bryant. And when we talk about Bryant, we're talking about one of the best assembled teams that the transfer portal aided in all of college basketball. And Jared Grasso has this Bryant team playing top tier basketball. We saw it against Syracuse. We bet it against Syracuse. And I think against Brown, one of my big concerns is that this is an in-state rivalry. Brown does have a capable game-changing scorer in Keno Lilly. And from my perspective, I love Sharif Kenny or whatever the hell they're calling him right now, but I want to see more Charles Pride. I want to see more Antoine Walker. I want to see more Earl Timberlake. I want to see this offense be split up a little more. Now, don't get me wrong. This is a good free throw shooting team. This is a good three-point shooting team. But I just think that when I look at Sharif Kenny and how this guy's going to go to the rim and what he's really doing there outside of the game against Syracuse, I want more Charles Pride. Charles Pride is a dangerous three-level scorer. There's a lot of big bodies with Walker and Timberlake and freaking Kevon Kramer that you can set this kind of screens that he needs, that he can go around and get right to the rim. So obviously Jared Grasso respects Pride. That's why we see him playing 30-plus minutes a game. But I'm just saying, when it comes down to the last shot, I want my guy having it. And obviously with the suspensions for Bryant, it'll be interesting to see who plays and who doesn't tonight. For me, I think that when you look at this game and you look at the opener, the number made sense. Bryant is able to win games defensively also. I think that we're all missing that part of the equation. Now, when I watch Bryant zone up a team with their length on the inside and on the wings, they're going to be able to take away a lot of those three-point shots that you're going to be able to shoot over other zone defenses, and they're going to take away a lot of those driving lanes that you think are open and then close up. At 11.5 points right now, it's getting a little out of hand for me. But when I look at the total going down from 157 down, I do agree with it. I think that we do see a bit of a higher scoring first half, and then I do think that the scoring slows down, and that's probably because Bryant excels even more defensively, and Brown finds it even more of a struggle to score. Outside of Brown's Keno Lilly, I do worry about their free throw shooting in general. This is not a team that I trust at the free throw line, and they do have the tendency to get there. This is a Brown team that if they're going to be in this game, it's going to be low scoring. It's going to be defensive. And if they cannot ball out, then I think that we see something similar to what we saw against Vermont, where Vermont scored early. They were able to torch them inside the arc. They were able to hit almost 50% of their threes. That's what Bryant can do plus some. So when I look at that opponent and then I look at this matchup here, it is easy to think that it's a 15-point win. It makes sense on paper. The numbers say so. But because it's an in-state rivalry, it makes me second guess it that much more. So I'm rolling with Bryant. I'm going to bite the bullet. I agree with the move to the under right now, even though you can get if you can get 157, I would put it that it slows down heavily in the second half. So that's my opinion on the game. All right. Yeah, Durko, I'm feeling a little bit better, but I still tested negative for it. So Friday night, bro, Club Pro. That's where I'll be going. So hopefully I'll have some money in my pocket. And I don't give a shit if I have COVID. All right, let's talk Wake Forest and Clemson. Now, This is a really interesting Wake Forest team just because what did Davion Williamson do what the hell was his goddamn name? Now I'm forgetting his goddamn name. Sorry about that. Oh yeah, Alondis Williams from Oklahoma. Yeah, so what did Alondis Williams do last year? He averaged what? Close to 20 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. Well, what did Steve Forbes go out on the transfer portal, get an underperforming Tyree Appleby from Florida? And what is he doing? He's averaging close to those same type of numbers. That makes Wake Forest a team that has adapted to losing 2 NBA players, gone out on the portal, replaced those players with adequate replacements, and now look at the freaking fruits of the labor. 7 out of 8 wins to start the season. Not all a bunch of cupcakes. Definitely the Jamaica tournament was a good freaking showing for them, even though they lost that game against Loyola Marymount in overtime. I just think that at the end of the day, this is a group that I have a lot of confidence in. Going into Wisconsin definitely could be a bit of a letdown, but I think that they've performed at their level pretty much every game. So can they go on the road and beat Clemson? The real question is what Clemson's going to do tonight. We know what Wake Forest is going to bring. They're going to bring Appleby. They're going to bring Cam Hildreth, who's been really good this year. And I think that their X factor, obviously, aside from Davion Williamson, is Damari Montesanto. This guy's put on a ton of weight. His three-point shooting has been the best on the team. I just want to see more of him. I remember what he did at ETSU. I remember what the hype was with him coming over. And then there's Andrew Carr, the Delaware transfer, who has just quietly done everything that you need to do. Obviously, the three-point shooting can definitely use a bump in the freaking numbers, but I think that when he's hit those threes in the second half that I've seen personally with my own eyes, I've liked the timing of them. This is a kid that obviously has a good mid-range jump shot. He's very rim-oriented, and he's not afraid to go and dunk the ball. And that's what you have with some of these Wake Forest big men. So why do I mention the big men? And I'm mentioning Carr, Matt Marsh, what's the fucking kid's name? The 6'10 freshman, Bodie Klinman or something. Clintman, Clintman. He's definitely a solid piece also. I think that there's a lot of skill in this Wake Forest front court that you have to defend guys and not just worry about backing them down or trying to box them out and not give them offensive rebounding shots. Now, Clemson, what's the best part of their offense? PJ Hall. What has PJ Hall meant to this team? Well, it's helped them get back in the winning column multiple times because what does he do? He does everything for this team. He plays big minutes. He gets to the free throw line. He gets high percentage looks, and he's expanded his range out to the three-point line. So with PJ Hall having to be possibly in foul trouble, having to play that harder on the defensive end that it hurts his jump shot, that's the kind of stuff that I want to be able to try and guess on pretty much. And when I look at Wake Forest's front court versus Penn State's front court, which doesn't have the size that they're going up against tonight, I'm going to be back in Wake Forest again. The question's going to be, can they win 20 minutes of this game or can they win 40 minutes of this game? That's the problem that I'm having right now. I think that they can win at least 20. I'm just not sure if they can win 40, especially with Clemson at home. So Clemson, listen, I'm not going to say a whole bunch about them, but they got a bunch of different freaking three-point weapons. They've shown that they can freaking score from the perimeter at a high rate and even better so at home. And let's be brutally honest, they haven't been terrible on the spread covering some numbers. So it's a tough game either way. I think that if Clemson wins this game, they keep Wake Forest off the free throw line. They stop a lot of the drives and interior scoring, and they take really good care of the basketball and create some of their own second chance opportunities, which has been a major freaking plague and issue for them. So It's a real toughie, in my opinion. I'm going to roll at least I'm rolling first off with the first half over. The first half under. I think that both these teams understand what they're going up against offensively, and I think that it's going to be very necessary, at least early on, to take away some of the strengths of both offenses. So could be totally the wrong play, but I have this thing with first half unders with good scoring offensive teams, and I'm just going to keep on riding it. I'm going to say this, if Wake Forest can't make shots early and they aren't winning at halftime, Clemson is one of probably, I don't know, like maybe my top 20 second half favorite plays. So if they're a favorite at halftime for your second half number, probably something that I'd be looking at live. And that's regardless of what I had pregame. So sometimes if I see myself going 0-1, I'm perfectly fine betting the other side at halftime, trying to go 1-1 and losing juice. But that's just me. All right, I've talked enough about that game. Let's talk about there's a lot of games at 7:00. Let's talk about Siena. All right, well, Siena obviously has played some fantastic basketball, really fucked me over against Seton Hall, but I won't complain about that. What I worry about in this game is what their three-point shooting is going to look like. This is something that they were able to overcome because their three-point defense was fantastic against Seton Hall, but they need that three-point shooting. They need to diversify some of their shot selection and their scoring. I love what they have in Javion McCollum. He is a fearless scorer, and it's really about who else is going to participate scoring-wise on a game-to-game basis. Now, if you get the ideal Siena performance, Andrew Platek and Jackson Stormo are both going to contribute double-figure scoring and do it in a variety of different ways. The question is going to be, what else do you get? Do you get Jace Johnson? Do you get Jordan Collier contributing? Michael Barr? Like, there's a ton of guys that on paper should be doing a little better. But if you have three guys at the mid-major level in a game that's lined around 130 something, I don't think that we need to worry about them scoring 90 points or 85 points. If Siena wants to win and cover tonight, they need to score 70. They need to hold Canisius under freaking 50, under 61. So that's how I look at it. When Siena's at their best, what are they doing? They're taking good shots inside and outside the arc, utilizing the ref's whistle and getting to the free throw line, and not being afraid of going after that mid-range jumper, taking a step or two inside the arc and dropping it. So I just like how Siena penetrates the paint, goes and gets those high percentage shots, and even though they are very capable of hitting threes, they're not going to fall in love with that shit unless they're open in the corner and on driving kickouts. So for me, I don't really know what to do on the spread on this game. I want to take Siena, especially now that the line's gone from 9 to 7. But this Canisius team, they're scrappy, they're experienced, and I just don't know how they're going to play on the road in a conference home opener when I haven't been able to really gauge how good their offense or defense is. Yeah, listen, they have some issues converting close to the rim, but some of their interior defense has been really bad. So against St. Bonaventure, they were really able to limit some of those mistakes and kill it with three-point shooting. If they don't get their three-point shooting and they're a team that's going to put up 30 three-point attempts a game, then they're in big trouble. So for me, I want to see if some shots are dropping, because when you have Jaco Fritz, Jordan Henderson, Jameer Moultrie, Xavier Long, like these are all capable collegiate players and capable of getting hot in one game. And I just don't want to be on the wrong side of that. So I lean towards Siena, but it's definitely not one of my favorite plays. All right, App State and Charlotte. I'll make this real quick. I'm rolling with App State here. I do think that App State is in a good situational rebound spot for them. And I also like the spot against Charlotte coming off the game winner by Treadgill that fucked me. Won't get into that anymore. But I think that with Charlotte, this is definitely a team that is not really showing that they lost Jameer Young as much as you would anticipate. And I think that's a good thing for them. I think that that's definitely giving them confidence because they can work it inside and out. They can score from the perimeter. And you know what? The only thing that I really have a knock on them is that they can get to the free throw line a little more. They're a very solid team from there. They're a good rim scoring team, and they're defended the rim even better. So showing that they can go out and win games like this, win in a rout, win when it's unexpected, it's a good sign for backers. I just don't like it in this particular spot at this particular number. I think that they win the game, but I don't think that they win the game by 7. I just think that App State has a knack for getting back into games and taking away stuff that worked for you in the first half. Look at how they came back from 16 points down and really challenged last time out against Furman. So even if guys like Ali Khalifa and freaking Milicic and freaking Bryce Williams have big games, I still worry about one aspect of their offense is that 3-point shooting going to be there the whole game? So don't forget Jackson Threadgill, even though he hit that shot, he had missed 4 or 5 consecutive 3-point attempts before he hit that one. And that could be enough misses for us to capitalize off and help App State stay in this game that much longer. I will say this, from a defensive perspective, I do worry about some of the on-ball defense that you're going to see from Charlotte. When you have a guy like Montre Gibson, this is a guy that's definitely good at getting into your freaking handle, taking the ball away from you and getting out onto the fast break. So a guy you want to be aware of when you're running your half-court offense. But for me, like I said, if this was a Charlotte number that we're seeing 3.5, I would be on Charlotte, but I'm not going to take them when we're seeing 6.5 or 7. So gonna roll on from there. Oh, yes, Metro Atlantic. Yes. So Niagara and Siena. That's a real interesting game because obviously with Niagara, I thought Niagara was going to take a little bit of a step back because they were going to have Marcus Hammond. They were going to have Marcus Hammond to keep that offense efficient, keep it rolling, keep it freaking in rhythm, keep it getting to the free throw line and scoring there. That's just not something that I'm seeing right now from this group in particular. Noah Thomason has done a fantastic job of asserting himself and being very dependable aside from the free throw line. I do like Sam Oreo quietly does his business and he stops shooting threes. So he understands that he's got to use that length and size to score against some smaller defenders that are matching up against him. I think that there are guys on this team like Braxton Bayless and Aaron Gray who can come off the bench and give you that extra offense, give you that boost. And when I talk about Niagara's interior scoring, I look at David Mitchell and I'm like, this is a guy that can make a big difference. This is a guy that can score inside. He can use his physicality, even though he's undersized. He just looks for good shooting opportunities. So feeding him the ball more and getting him the ball more against this Iona front court, which is a good defensive front court, but not the best rim protection. I think that Niagara has a chance to stay in this game if they can stay in early. If they're not losing by more than 7 points at halftime, then they have a chance to stay in it for 40 minutes. I've seen Niagara get out to some leads. I've seen them be able to protect those leads. And even though their numbers aren't really flashy, they have a bunch of solid free throw shooters aside from Thomason. So when you can make your free throws and you have such a deliberate offense like Niagara does, you can mitigate some of these these close to the rim misses that you're going to create for yourself off your offensive rebounding, and you're going to be able to hit a bunch of threes. Offensively, you got to guard the three-point line. You got to hit the three-point line. If they can do that, then they will challenge just like they did against St. John's. And when we look at that number was around 17. Now we're talking about Iona, who is definitely a fucking powerhouse, owns the Metro Atlantic, but in my opinion, they don't have the firepower in the backcourt that I'm used to seeing. Yes, because of Pitino's system, the numbers are working there in their favor, but the free throws aren't there, and that's a big problem for me. In every game Iona's played this year, 4 of them, and against very stout mid-major competition, what has been the plague of their offense is not getting to the free throw line enough. And you need to be able to facilitate your offense on all 3 levels if you're going to win and cover by this type of number. And we're talking about, 13.5 now? Wouldn't be surprised if it goes up to 14. So I just think that at the end of the day, I love some of the players for Iona. I just don't love the number. I think that when you look at their point guard situation, it's very solid. Good ball handlers, smart point guards, guys that are experienced, can facilitate. I think that from a scoring perspective, where you're going to have less expectation for Dennis Jenkins, you're going to have more for Walter Clayton. He's been fantastic. He's the most important player scoring-wise for Iona. If you can't stop him, then you're going to have problems covering this number. If you can't keep Barrick Jean-Louis out of the paint and stop him from dunking the basketball, well, then you got a problem. I just think that with Niagara's defense and with Niagara's depth, they can withstand some fouls, and they can keep this Iona team off the free throw line. So, like most underdogs, especially with road dogs, you probably want to look at the first half dog spot if it's 7.5 or better. And I think full game, Niagara still has value. So, from a total perspective, I'm obviously looking at first half under. When it comes to this game, I don't think that we see 130 in it. That favors Niagara that much more. And if it's going to be low scoring, chances are we're not going to see 3 points a minute in the first half. So I would wait the game out as long as possible, and then I would go from there. But seems to me like a Niagara number and a first half under. All right, South Dakota State and Kent State. Listen, I'm a Kent State guy. I like what they do. I like their ball handling. I like the experience that they have at the point guard spot with Malik Jacobs and Sincere Carey. And from a defensive standpoint, watching them play against Houston, it solidified what I already suspected about this team. Now, there are weaknesses when it comes to some of their defense, and that's just getting back in transition, stopping teams from getting to the free throw line against them. But outside of that, I think that some of their offensive rebounding issues giving them up, I don't think it's going to really plague them here. Now, from a personnel perspective, listen, this is a very good Kent State team. When you don't put the ball in the hands of Carey or Jacobs, Giovanni Santiago can run this offense fine. You have multiple guys that can hit the 3 at 40% or better. And then you have a bunch of guys that can also run from the front court. I think that when I look at a guy like Jalen Sullinger or Julius Rollins, I do see some potential there, even though it's not refined yet. Sullinger's seeing minutes on the floor because he's hitting shots, and that's what you need. Sometimes Sincere Carey can get a little unselfish, and I think that the more selfish he gets, the better it's going to be offensively for his team, because he gets to the free throw line more frequently than anybody else, and that's the guy that you need to close when you're beating a team by 7 or 8 points and you have a spread at this number. I think that if this was in a different building, I would be looking at it a different way if it was a neutral court Or if it was a South Dakota State, it'd be looking a different way. But I just think that with this Kent State team, they're going to win with their defense first and then with their offense. They're going to take the ball away from you. They're going to make you work the shot clock and take those difficult shots. And when it comes to taking you out of rhythm and really making you change your offensive plan on the fly, South Dakota State is going to really have to do a good job of being able to avoid that, because this is a team that is not going to allow a jump shooting team like the Jackrabbits to go gung ho on them. So as much as it cringes me to lay a number like this, I do feel confident laying a number like this with Kent State at home. Turnovers have been an issue for South Dakota State. Taking care of the basketball, getting those second chance opportunities have not been there as frequently as we're used to seeing. Now, I do think that there are some X factors for South Dakota State, like William Kyle, a guy who I've tweeted about and I'm very enamored with from a basketball perspective. He's a guy that you really have to freaking keep out of position, because he is very good at establishing position close to the bucket, and that's what's reflecting in some of his numbers. But from a physicality standpoint, from a rebounding, from a leaping standpoint, I just don't see the front court skill that I'm used to. Now, Matt Dellinger and William Kyle may make me eat my words tonight, but I do think that there's enough three-point shooting and enough good on-ball perimeter defense for Kent State to take care of it. So I'm rolling with Kent State. And listen, Sincere Carey, he's there because his girlfriend goes there. So power to him for following his woman. All right. Just get a drink here. Let's talk some UMass and Harvard. Now, this is one of the most difficult games on the board, because Harvard is one of these teams that can play up with you. They can outscore you, or they can D you up. They can make you look bad. They can make you look good. It is a fucking true coin flip college basketball game. Now, what I definitely had to consider is, what's the situation with the contract for this game? Is this a home and home series? Is Harvard paying UMass to come play them in their building? These are questions that I haven't answered. And I'm definitely curious about, because this UMass team is definitely improved. There's no doubt about it. From a defensive standpoint, they're playing very good basketball. But from an offensive standpoint, there are some issues. Now, free throw shooting is something that I'm very obsessed with. And when I want to bet a favorite, I want to be comfortable in the fact that these guys can hit free throws. Now, it seems like this is like the exact same spot that we had with UMass versus USF. I don't think it's the case. I think that this is the one game that if UMass isn't on point from all three levels, not leaving points at the free throw line, taking care of three-point shooters and closing out without fouling, keeping Harvard off the free throw line, which is a much more difficult task than you're anticipating, this could be very problematic. Obviously, with a guy like freaking DeAndre Dominguez, he's a guy that can be a freaking X factor for you off the bench. But you have so many other guys. When we're talking about RJ Louise, the freshman, who's definitely garnering fucking starter minutes. Then we're talking about Matt Cross, the Miami transfer, who can hit a bunch of threes for you. There's just a lot of goddamn weapons that you have to freaking guard for. And that's before even getting to guys like Noah Fernandez and TJ Weeks. So it's definitely a hard team for UMass to D up on. It's a hard team for Harvard to D up on, because there's just so many different weapons. But for me, I have to look at what Harvard and who Harvard's beaten, who they lost to. And that's where UMass wins the battle for me. Both these teams are going to miss some free throws. Both these teams are solid defensively. But when you look at some of the teams that Harvard's beaten versus UMass, you're a little more impressed with UMass's body of work. I think that when I watch Harvard and I go back to the Northeastern game, I'm like, listen, if they didn't convert some of those buckets close to the rim in the second half, that game gets away from them. And it almost did in the first place. 3-point defense is the way to beat Harvard. If you want to beat Harvard, you got to beat them at the 3-point line. You got to score it on them, and you got to stop them from hitting them. So I've seen Harvard win games without hitting threes. This is a game that they cannot afford to be wasting shot attempts because UMass will make them pay. Now, the other concern that I have with Harvard is just what is Chris Ledlam going to do at the free throw line? We know how aggressive he is. We know how rim-oriented he is. But can he do better than 18 for 34? That's not going to work. That's a lot of points that you're leaving on the board. And doing that once again, like I'm sounding like a broken record against UMass, that is playing with fire. So I have to look at the first half under, even though the number's going the other way. And I have to look at UMass here once again, even at 1.5. This line very easily could be 2.5 for Harvard. It would make more sense if it was. So this is a very entertaining game if it's defensive. But can you trust either of these teams with the lead with the way that they shoot free throws? Harvard's shown that you can, but I think that they're taking a step up in class against UMass today. All right, let me check this StreamYard thing. Yes, sir. Huskies, absolutely. UConn made me quite proud last night. It was thrilling, even though I was talking some shit about Andre Jackson on Twitter today and getting an earful from UConn fans. I still believe what I believe. And I'll say this, Andre Jackson has cost me a lot of money. In his 2.5 years at UConn, I've seen him fucking turn the ball over in last seconds. I've seen him take dumb shots when we need a fucking bucket from someone who can make it. I've seen him miss free throws. I've seen him freaking take airball threes at the end of shot clocks. I've seen him fucking let defenders get by him and get right to the rim and score a bucket. I've seen him freaking weak on box outs and giving up an offensive rebound that leads to a bucket that makes a difference. I don't have love for the kid like everybody else does. So unless he starts showing me game logs of fucking points, scoring, efficiency, then I don't give a shit. I'm just going to keep on saying what I've been saying about him, is that he's overhyped. There's a lot of athletic players that play basketball in America and in the world in general. Athleticism is not something that I'm going to praise you for because it's something that should be in pretty much all basketball players. So I'm not going to argue about it, but it is what it is. All right, let's talk a little Pittsburgh, NC State. I think that this is an NC State team total spot for me. I'm not in love with the 9 points. I do think that Pittsburgh was quite impressive against Northwestern, but is that really a measuring test for an ACC home opener on the road versus one of the top offenses in the nation and an offense that loves to score near the rim? So, it's a real tough number to bet from the spread, but it feels like a bit of an easier number to bet on the team total with NC State. I think that for me, my initial lean would be I would be looking at a first half over with Pittsburgh, NC State. I would be looking at NC State as a first half favorite, but then the only bet that I've actually placed is NC State's team total over. So I think that with NC State, Casey Morsell really has made a nice transition over from Virginia. That's really helped him out a ton. But I just don't think that this Pittsburgh team can replicate that type of level of intensity, effectiveness, shot making 2 games in a row. So I just don't see it. I just don't see it. This is a team that's going to win with their defense. Their defense is spectacular. When we talk about keeping teams off the free throw line, we talk about freaking interior defense, making you take difficult shots. It's all good and gravy, but can they freaking hit 15 threes versus NC State? I'm not sure. And even though they've blown out Alabama State, FDU, William and Mary, some of those games were not as close as the final score indicates. And most importantly, they were at home. So now you're going into NC State's building. You need obviously the top performance that you can get from Blake Hinson and Jamarius Burton, because I do think that Pittsburgh is at their best when their guards are scoring, when their wing players are leading the scoring. John Hugley is a great offensive player, but you want him in a certain type of tempo and pace to score and dominate. Now, there will be questions with what Nelly Cummings' status is tonight, if he plays or he doesn't. He went, I think, down with an ankle injury last time out, and even though his three-point shooting has been horrid, he's still an important player offensively from a ball facilitation standpoint. Now, there will be other guys that can handle the ball, like Greg Elliott and Nike Savandi, but obviously Nelly Cummings is a true scoring point guard and definitely an asset. I just think that at this number, it just doesn't really make sense for me to be backing Pittsburgh. I think that with NC State, we've seen a really consistent freaking offense from them, a team that consistently gets to the rim, really does a good job of scoring on the interior, takes care of the basketball, most importantly, in the half-court offense. And from a defensive standpoint, they're not a sieve. They're not a fucking diamond in fucking the rough, but they are capable. And I just think that with them having a similar opponent in William and Mary, I do think that they can win, and I think that they can score into the 80s. And when you can get a team total that's under that, I have no problem with that. Obviously, with freaking Terquavian Smith, it's very important to have him in the lineup. It's very important to get Jarkel Joyner going. But Dusan Mahoric, he's done a good job of scoring on the inside. He takes it over the left shoulder and the right shoulder pretty accurately. But you're going to need more from DJ Burns. You're going to need more from Jack Clark. DJ Burns is obviously a guy who's going to be close to the rim. But I think that he's also a guy that can get to the free throw line a little more. And with being such a big body, it does bode well for him. We've seen what he did at Winthrop, and I think that he can be very effective in this matchup, especially against Hugley for NC State today. So I like NC State. Probably will end up on the first half at least and then gauge it from there. But I also like their team total over, and that's what I bet so far in the game. All right, Northeastern and Georgia Tech. Listen, I think that this is a Georgia Tech win. I'm just not sure how effective their size is going to be against this Northeastern team. They're a very scrappy group. You're obviously getting a mad Georgia Tech team who I thought at one point was going to be able to make the comeback on Iowa in their Big Ten ACC challenge, but obviously that wasn't meant to be. You just need better three-point shooting from this team right now. I'm just not impressed from a scoring perspective with what they're doing, and it makes it difficult to want to lay double digits with them. But we have seen them play games at this type of level. We've seen them play against Northern Illinois. We've seen them against, who was it? Recently, I think it was North Alabama. At the end of the day, this is not a step up in competition. This is not Power 5 basketball. Now, what Georgia Tech has to clean up is some of these unnecessary fouls. When you're fouling people on them crashing the glass and then putting them on the free throw line and in the bonus 10 minutes into a half, that's problematic. That's how teams are going to be able to stay close. And when you're not forcing turnovers, you're not being the aggressor. You're not making your opponent play up to your level. And Georgia Tech is a team that can pressure and can take the ball away from you if they choose to. Now, if they choose to, that's going to be the question. Now, I look at a guy like Jalen Moore. I look at Devion Smith. These are guys that I expect to lead that pressure defense. Now, from an offensive perspective, there are a ton of three-point shooters on this team that just are not carrying their weight. And I look at Kyle Sturdivant. I look at Lance Terry. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, these are guys that you brought in to hit shots. Now, hit some goddamn shots. I think that Georgia Tech, once again, is one of these teams where the numbers moving against them, but I still like them. I think that first half, I'd want to see how they're matching up against Northeastern, what kind of minute restriction Rodney Howard's on, who's coming back tonight, because when you have some size against Northeastern, it really helps you because they're a team that want to play close to the rim. They want to play with some undersized guys. And when you look at the guys like Nagawa, my fellow Canadian, Stuke, my fellow Canadian, Telford, my fellow Canadian, they're all in that 6'7", 6'9" range. And those are the guys that they're not going to be content just taking three-point shots. Now, one of the big absences for Northeastern, in which what makes me like Georgia Tech that much more, is what the status of Chris Doherty is. If Doherty isn't playing, then I like Georgia Tech that much more. But if I find out that Doherty's playing, he's a difference maker. He's a back-to-the-basket scorer. He's a wide body, and he's an experienced collegiate player that knows how to play against big men that are trying to freaking back them down all the time. So right now, without knowing what the status of him is, I like what I see with Georgia Tech, at least first half on paper. We'll see if they can freaking up the tempo and really force Northeastern to play out of their comfort level. So I'm leaning towards Georgia Tech first half, but I'm not crazy about it. Now, here's a game that I'm definitely crazy about. UTA and LSU. Now, I will not fall into this goddamn trap again with LSU. I cannot trust them. They may cover tonight and fuck me, but fuck them. It's like, all I ask from them is like, make me some money. So I figured out a way to make money with LSU. Not bet them on the spread. I'm not doing that tonight. I'm on UTA. I like the 19 points. I took UTA's team total over 55.5. I do think that this game goes over, but the number that I got is long gone. And now I'm feeling all first half fucking under happy. So I'm like, listen, I got UTA team total over 55.5. Do I need UTA to score 30 points a half to even get me there? No, they could score less. So now I'm looking at this total that's gone up 4 points, and I'm like, wow, 62 on a team total. Excuse me, 62 on a first half under. That looks good to me. Now it looks good to me. It didn't look good to me at 59, but it looks good at 62. So I feel like I'm playing with fire because I'm betting competing picks. But I love tales of two halves. We see them every fucking night. Pretty much every other game. Why wouldn't this be one different? UTA, LSU, first half under 62. Full game over. LSU, UTA. Take UTA's team total over 55.5. Take them plus 19. It's an expensive wager, but it definitely seems like the right play to me. So I like what I see on paper with LSU. I like this Murray State Matt McMahon offense that we're seeing. But sometimes these guys are very selfish and they just don't have that killer instinct. Now, UTA's physical. I think that they're not my favorite team to back at this number range. But it's just more, I just can't really back LSU at this number. And I've watched the Wofford game out of my memory. Now, LSU's team total at 75.5 seemed like a good number. I do think that if this game's going to go over, like I anticipated this morning, then there's a good shot that they can score 76 points. But seeing UTA and needing just 56 from them, that was a little more attractive and a higher probability. All right, Gonzaga and Baylor. No, thank you. I would have taken the under. That's moved too much. I don't even want to take the under in the first half. I see a 77. Oh no, never mind. I closed my account there. Can't use that. 76 points. It's a gamble. It's a hit or miss to me. So I just don't want to bet on this game as much as other people do. I just think that this is a good game to just enjoy and watch. Maybe live bet once you see how they match up with each other, but neither of them are really at their best right now. Neither of them are really resembling top 5 teams in the country, and neither of them have been really good for my bankroll. So I'm not interested. Illinois and Maryland, that's a game I'm definitely interested in. I think Illinois is fantastic, but I do think that Maryland is well coached, and I think Maryland at home is that much more dangerous. Now, this Maryland team has done a fantastic job, especially on the transfer portal, of bringing guys in that fit the system, fit the pace and tempo, and can score with what I call not as many shot opportunities. And that's what Kevin Willard has with this team. Now, Maryland's going to play great defense. They got to think about, wow, Illinois was able to speed up UCLA. We got to stop them from doing that this time. And that's Maryland's main goal, taking away the three-point shot, taking away those drives to the rim, forcing you to work that clock, taking difficult shots, off-balance shots, the shot that you don't want to take. That's what they can do. And I've watched it against upper-tier competition. I've watched it against lower-tier competition. We obviously just saw it most recently in the second half versus Louisville, and that was literal textbook shut-down defense. Now, can they do that versus Illinois? That's the fucking million-dollar question. From a talent perspective, they have experienced wing players like Dante Scott and Hakeem Hart who can play bigger than they are. You got a fucking up-and-coming big man in Julian Reese, who, aside from his free throw shooting, which actually helped me one of the games, I can't remember which one, I think it was against Coppin State and against Western Carolina. Very, very helpful with his misses, but in a game like this, those will come back to haunt you. And, of course, they got a Canadian on the roster, Patrick Emelin. I love that son of a bitch. So there's definitely a lot to like from a side perspective backing Maryland at home. It's hard to win on the Big Ten on the road, in the Big Ten on the road, excuse me. And I would be fine getting down with this Maryland team. Now, from an Illinois standpoint, we've seen Brad Underwood really coach this team up really well. They play fantastic defense just like our friends on the other side do with Maryland. But the problem is they have this hole in their offense. It's called their free throw shooting. And when you have so many touches that are going down to your big men like Danger, like Coleman Hawkins, you need them to be able to freaking clean up those points at the free throw line. And losing 4 or 5 of those points in a game from those two alone, that's something that could seal their fate. Now, I do worry about Sky Clark in this game specifically for Illinois. Now, this is going to be probably the stiffest defensive on-ball test that he's going to face because it's going to be physical defenders. Guys with length, guys that are going to be able to bring that help defense and trap you in spots in the half court. If he can overcome that kind of stuff, then Illinois is going to be fine because Illinois is going to have some young ball handlers, and that's what I think Kevin Willard and this Maryland on-ball defense can really take advantage of and make Illinois pay. From an offensive standpoint, it's very simple. You stop Terrence Shannon from scoring from all three levels, then you will win this basketball game. But if you can't do that, ask fucking UCLA. If you can't do that, you're in trouble. So I think that this is a game that more resembles the Virginia game. And I like Maryland, and I like the first half under in this game. I think that 69 points or 68.5 points, that is a reasonable number to take an under with two teams that, first off, one isn't a good free throw shooting team with their front court players, and two, the other team's a very physical on-ball defending team, so they're going to make it difficult for you to get those mid-range jump shots. They're going to make it difficult for you to get those lanes to the rim. It's a real impressive game. I look forward to watching it, but I will be backing Maryland. I'll eat crow if I have to, and I'm going to be rolling with that first half under in that game. So, all right, let's talk about a less exciting game, and then we'll get on to the added board, and that is going to be freaking Northern Illinois against freaking those sons of bitches in Idaho. Now, with Northern Illinois, obviously this is a very unclean offense, and they looked really good against Eastern Illinois, but I would say pump the brakes on that shit. Now they're taking a step up in what I would call quality and going on to the road once again. I think that when you look at Eastern Illinois and some of their defensive flaws, what were their biggest issues? Stopping the drives, stopping the freaking open three-point looks, not being able to rotate, not being able to get back out to shooters. So I don't think you're going to see the same issues with Idaho that you saw with Eastern Illinois. Now, from a personnel perspective, Keshawn Williams is the freaking mainstay of this team. Outside of him, David Colt's got to be able to bring some three-point shooting. But outside of that, you're really depending on guys like Zarik Nutter to be able to freaking facilitate some offense for himself, create shots for himself, and be able to hit those shots and get to the free throw line. It's a lot of ifs. It's a lot of ifs for me. So I'm not in love. I'm not in love with this Northern Illinois team, especially when Anthony Crump is not playing his best basketball. This is a guy that you expected to be able to really be a force for you, but really hasn't turned out to be so far this year. Not saying that can't turn around. I'm just saying doesn't bode well in the third game of a road trip. So when I saw this number, I looked at my numbers. I was like, wow, this is 146. So I had my 2.5 points of value. I'm on the over here. I'm considering getting on the first half over, and I'm on Idaho plus 1.5. So I'm rolling with the Vandals. I think that they come back and they fuck with their eyes open at home. Listen, if anybody can complain about Idaho, it's definitely me. I've had a couple rough beats on them already this year, specifically their last game against Pacific. But I do think that what I like about this team is how solid they are of getting easy looks, scoring the ones that you should score. And when we're talking about Devontae Moffitt, we're talking about Isaac Jones, these guys realize, why am I going to hang out on the three-point line if the shit ain't dropping? I'm going to go inside and I'm going to score an easier bucket. And when we're talking about putting guys on the line and keeping a lead, extending in the last 5 minutes of the second half, Devontae Moffitt is one of the best closers in mid-major basketball. So I am very confident in this Idaho team at home that they can freaking take care of business. They're not a team that needs a bunch of freaking brute strength to freaking score the basketball. They have guys that can hit the mid-range jumper. They have guys that can drive and get to the rim, and they have guys that can finish at the rim. So watch out for Isaac Jones fucking slamming it down. I think Idaho wins this game, and I think that the line is wrong. So 2.5 right now. I'm good with Idaho at 2.5 also. All right, let's talk some added board. We've already talked Brown and Bryant. Let's talk Kennesaw State and Mercer. And then let me get a drink. Oh yeah, always chicken tenders. I'm on the COVID, so I've had to fucking order groceries for myself. So I haven't been able to go out and get the chicken tenders. I will not get my chicken tenders from a DoorDash guy. No fucking way. They're cold. They take forever. They expect the tip before the food gets there. No way. I don't work like that. You get my food fast to me, the bigger tip you get. If you want to fucking play that game, no problem. I will fucking not eat it. That's my mini rant there. All right. Kennesaw and Mercer. So listen, this is a Kennesaw State team that I'm very into. I like them. I like their experience. I like the way that they score the basketball. I love their three-point shooting, but what do I not like? Their free throw shooting. When I'm talking about Terrell Burton, when I'm talking about Brandon Stroud, these are guys that I depend on scoring the basketball, protecting leads, extending leads. And when you are that inconsistent and Desmond Robinson doesn't get a pass either, that hurts me. It hurts my goddamn heart to watch it. And when you're a 4.5 point underdog on the road, your free throws matter. That's what's holding me back on Kennesaw. Otherwise, I'd be looking at Kennesaw. They've been a very good underdog, aside from the Campbell game. So I think that going up against Mercer, obviously, this is a different team than Neftali Alvarez and Felipe Haas left last year. But I do think that they are improved. I think that Kamar Robertson is a very dangerous three-point shooter that you have to freaking put a body on. Even face guard him at times if he's being able to get shots off. 7'2" David Craig has been awesome. For a guy that tall, he doesn't have terrible footwork, and he is very good at blocking shots without his feet lifting and jumping in the air. So he's not freaking fouling trying to block some of these shots. He's just using his wingspan to do it naturally. I really admire tall people that do that kind of stuff, because when you're blocking shots, you don't want to be blocking shots that are going out of bounds. You want to block shots that are going to your teammate's hand and leading to a fast break scoring opportunity. Now, from a scoring standpoint, there's definitely three-point shooting. There's free throw shooting issues with this team, but they do a good job of getting enough of everything. Now, if you can get some good minutes out of fucking Jay Kionis, then that's even better, because I like the freshman. I like his size. I like the defense that he plays. He's the type of guy that can create a couple defensive transition opportunities for you. And with this Mercer team, you need a bit more of that. From a turnover perspective, I don't think that you're going to be able to freaking force these guys into turnovers, but I really like this matchup, especially in the front court for David Craig tonight. He could have a standout breakout game scoring wise. I do think Mercer is able to win. I just don't like the number. So I don't have a bet on the game. I was leaning towards the first half under, but I haven't done anything as of yet. All right, Southern and Louisiana attack. I made the out in Louisiana attack home. Probably won't do it again today. Well, Southern looked really good against Loyola, Maryland. That was a bit of a wrong. You're going up against a team that has some pretty good firepower, is coming off a pretty bad loss that really they should have been a little more competitive. And if they could have taken care of the basketball a little better, then they would have been. This is a very good three-point shooting team. This is a very good free throw shooting team. So fundamentally, playing with the lead is something that they can do. The problem, what I've seen, is can they stop you from the three-point line? They're giving up a lot of threes, and against the wrong team like Southern, that could come back to haunt you. I think that playing at home court is going to play a big factor. I do think that we see a game that's more along the lines of what we saw against Louisiana Monroe, where they do get their offense going from all three levels. They play very good interior defense and then sacrifice some of the three-point makes that they may give up. If this number was 12.5 or 13, I'd be looking the other way. But when you talk about a guard core that includes Keaton Willis, Kobe Williams, Isaiah Crawford, that's good enough for me. Now, if they can get freaking David Green some more minutes, then that would be better. Obviously, with Louisiana Tech, there have been some injury issues with this roster, so it is important to check some of those before you lay it down on them. But right now, at 9.5, I would be fine taking La Tech. Any higher, you get closer to that 13-point threshold, which was my number, and then you lose that 2.5 points of value. All right, I'll make this real quick. I'm not a fan of Mike White, but he's doing some good things with this Georgia team so far, and he's been doing some good things for my bankroll, which obviously is most important. I think that with Georgia, the key for them is being able to get ball penetration and getting to the rim and not settling for jump shots. When you have so many skilled drivers like Justin Hill and Terry Roberts, you can overcome missing Kario Oquendo. But if Oquendo plays today with Justin Hill, with Terry Roberts, with Jalen Ingram, who's working his way back from injury, has already hit 4 out of 5 threes this year, that's what I need. This is a talented, experienced roster. Martez McBride is still there. Braylon Bridges is still there. Jabari Abdur-Rahim, Matthew Alexander Moncrief may be injured, but he's my fellow Canadian, I'm on Georgia first half, so I like it. I like Georgia in this game. I think they cover full game also. I think that Florida A&M against Florida had all the opportunities for Florida A&M to fuck with their eyes open, and they couldn't. And I think that we're going to see a similar effort, a similar slaughter tonight. So I'm rolling with Georgia first half. If they don't cover first half, then I'll bet them full game at a better number than I can get now. And I like the over in the game because even if freaking Florida A&M scores 50, I think that this Georgia team may score 90 tonight. So their team total is something I'm also looking at, and I'm just real interested in it. Okay, so now we're getting some serious line moves on this next game, and that's Boston U and Merrimack. Now, I'm on Merrimack +5 and +3.5. Those are two games that I'm on, two sides that I'm on, because first, I bet Merrimack last night, missed out on the news whether or not freaking Jordan Minor was going to play. And I was like, okay, listen, Merrimack has been getting smacked around. They've been losing ATS. It hasn't looked good for them. But where have they been doing it? Who they've been doing it against? And what I realized is, listen, they're losing games that they should lose. Now they're playing a in-state rival, a team that by their standards should be freaking someone that they look up to in Boston U. So I was like, no. What does Merrimack need to do? Merrimack needs to not get killed on the glass. They need to be a little more offensive efficient, and they need Ziggy Reed to have a big three-point shooting game. Now, if they get Jordan Minor back, then they should be a goddamn favorite, not an underdog. So that's why I was like, okay, I'll take Merrimack at 3.5. Then I wake up, they're a 5-point underdog. Okay, sign me up again for 5. It doesn't make sense that Boston U is this kind of favorite. Now, they're experienced. They have continuity. They have chemistry. They have inside-out scoring. They have Walter White. They have Nevin Zink. They have a bunch of guys that at the collegiate level know what they're doing. But if you've watched any BU basketball this year, you cannot bet on them as a favorite. So I didn't. And if Jordan Minor plays tonight, and I see in those sidearm stats that he's playing, Merrimack on the money line is going to be one of my late ads. I'm on the first half under in this game. With both these teams, I'm always worried about their scoring. Chances are they'll score a shitload today just to spite me. But so far this year, first half unders with both these teams have been very profitable. So that was my first instinct when it came to the total. I want to take a team total under on Boston U, But now that we see the number moving back down to, I think, as low as 3, it's going to be lower on the team total also. So you're losing value there as well. So I think that this is a Merrimack win. I think that Merrimack at home is different than Merrimack on the road. And if Merrimack gets Jordan Minor back, it's going to be tough sledding for BU. Now, we only have a couple games left. I'll try and speed it up so that you guys don't have to sit and listen to my COVID voice. And we'll move on from there. So Eastern Kentucky and James Madison is one of these situational spots that you're taught this is a spot that you back. You're like, okay, James Madison, they were a fucking big favors Valpo. We had a huge line move from 10 to 16, and then they lose outright in what, double overtime? What's the safest way to approach this game? Not taking James Madison as a 14-point favorite, even if the probability of them covering it is high. It doesn't make sense to me. Yes, James Madison's going to be able to penetrate the paint. They have multiple guys that can create shots for themselves. They have multiple guys that are fearless in dropping threes in transition. But can you get those transition opportunities against Eastern Kentucky's press? How much is Eastern Kentucky going to press? How much are those three-point shots that you miss going to turn into three-point corner transition ops for Eastern Kentucky? Now, Eastern Kentucky is not as talented as they were last year. I still worry about it at this kind of number. The totals is out of control. We've seen it go up from 149 to 158.5. That's insane to me. For any of these non-public bettors, you have to look at that line and be like, well, I have to play the under or I have to not play it at all. So for me, I avoided the spread. I got a relatively good number on the total. I think I got 152.5. I'll have to double check my bet account, my bet slip later. But I thought that the safest play was going to be James Madison team total over. I think that is something that we've done very well on so far this year, or at least I have and my Patreon and Discord people have. But it just seems like the simplistic play for this game. I don't want to depend on Eastern Kentucky being able to score bucket for bucket because they haven't been able to show that they can do that consistently. But I don't want to take James Madison as a 14-point favorite when I just saw them lose outright as a similar number. What I can rely on is James Madison being comfortable at home, being able to score the basketball with a variety of different players in case one of your stars like freaking Vado Morse isn't able to score. And even if they lose, they will extend the game, and that could lead to those free throws that help you get over the team total. So that's what I'm feeling on the game. You know, I got a better number on the total. I got James Madison team total over, and I'm going to try and limit it at just that. So let's move on to the next game, and that is Maryland Eastern Shore and Liberty. I'll make this real quick. I'm on Liberty minus 15.5. I like the first half under. I think that Maryland Eastern Shore coming off the back-to-back, even though it was a good win against Lehigh, I don't think that they have their best tonight. And I think that they ride high off that win in the first half. But I do think that Liberty adjusts, Liberty fixes whatever they have to fix, and Liberty fucking comes through. Bit of a biased homer pick and a huge number, but I don't care. I'm still going to take Liberty, even though the smarter play is probably to take Eastern Shore. All right, here's another quick one. Not going to talk much about it. Charleston Southern and South Florida. Listen, I will not trust South Florida as any kind of fucking favorite. I will not do it. I don't care how many tickets they have to burn before I stop doing it. I will not do it. I do not trust this team offensively. I don't trust this team in fucking games that they're playing lower tier competition. I only like South Florida now in games where they're playing upper tier competition. Charleston Southern does not fall into that category. Charleston Southern is a team that can score on you. They can get out to a lead. They can hit some shots, but their defense is like an old woman's granny pants, fucking wide and open. I don't like South Florida. I won't take them. I took Charleston Southern at 12. I would still take them at 10.5. And I'm going to take Charleston Southern +6 on the first half. I'm not sipping that fucking Kool-Aid with South Florida. No, thank you. East Carolina, Campbell, I don't have anything on. This is a game where I lost a ton of live bets fucking betting East Carolina against South Carolina State. Pre-game bets, live bets, just a fucking bad taste in my mouth. It's like the same with Wichita. So what I want to do with East Carolina is not a team that I can ever bet on the first half. I can't do it. They're not a first half team. They love to fall behind. They love to have to come back. If they're going to come back against Campbell, probably a little more difficult than trying to come back against South Carolina State, which you were not able to accomplish the goal. I just don't know what to do with East Carolina, you know. When I look at my number says 7.5 for East Carolina. So when I look at 4 or 3.5, I'm like, oh my God. Take your fucking opinion and bias and heart out of it and just bet the number. The number's saying there's value there. Bet the value. I haven't done so yet. What I will do, and I will promise you, is that if East Carolina is down and I see a plus money price live, I'm going to bet that. If anything, East Carolina's team total may be good, but if it's a slow defensive game, which is what Campbell wants because they do not want to get blown out and smacked around like they did against Stetson, then that's also a bad play. So just having a tough time with it altogether. Towson and Long Island, I want to take LIU, but I really don't like them. It's not a game that was high on my priority list either. I don't want to take Towson as a 20-point favorite on the road. I'm definitely scarred a little bit by their loss or by the lack of cover versus Albany. So with Towson, if they don't have Jason Gibson, that's a big loss on the perimeter. That's a big loss on the perimeter defense aspect. And that's a very solid ball handler that you're not going to have. LIU's been really sticky, you know. I would lean towards the first half over. I'd lean towards LIU first half, but I haven't bet either of those yet. All right, last game on the board, and then I got to go take a fucking break and start fucking hitting some of these Saturday lines. Colgate and Auburn. Yeah. Colgate's a great mid-major team. They looked awesome against Syracuse, but now you're playing against pressure defense, and your ball handling is not good enough to withstand that shit. I think Auburn's going to eat Colgate up. The only way Colgate's able to stay in this game tonight is if they're hitting an insane amount of threes and if they're protecting the basketball. If they can limit some of these turnovers off Auburn makes, because Auburn is going to pressure you when they make a bucket. And if they make buckets early and then they can turn those made buckets into pressure defensive situations that they turn you over and then they score again, it's going to be very difficult for Colgate not to get blown out. This is the type of game that you miss having Nelly Cummings. You wish that he didn't leave for Pittsburgh, because Nelly Cummings is good enough as a ball handler and a point guard that can handle pressure to deal with Auburn's ball pressure. But if you watch Auburn basketball, you know that these guys really can take you out of rhythm and freaking force you into some really dumb mistakes. So for that fact, I like the first half over, and that's about it. I'm not going to bet Auburn as a 13.5 point favorite. I think that they cover, but just not something that at 5 o'clock I'm into betting right now. All right, guys, that is all the games on the board. I'm a little tired right now from all that talking. And I will say this, Fordham plus 11 looks really fucking tasty already. A lot of good games tomorrow. It's going to be a fucking explosive day. And it's a huge card also. So, very, very excited. Yeah, big card. Holy. Wow. Discord is going to get a shit ton. Google Sheets going to get it even more. Oh my God. I have a lot of money out tomorrow. All right, that's it for me. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. And if you have any games or questions that you want to talk about, feel free to DM me. Just don't be annoying about it. Have a great night. Enjoy your games and win.